All right, here we are. Fantastic. Because the techie moron here is a little bit slow on the uptake, we are just a few minutes late starting. So officially, this is good evening and welcome to episode 7 of Pitchfork Radio. As many of you know, the purpose of the show is to highlight individuals and groups who are taking their knowledge of the world we live in into action to support our movement into realms of freedom. My guest this evening is one that I am happy to call a friend for about the last year. He was originally on my show last April when I was doing Our Natural Rights. I find him to be one of the most honest and philosophically consistent people I know, and one that is full of integrity as well. Joining me this evening is Jeran Campanella. Jeran is a YouTube creator who tries to get others to challenge the things that they were taught were true. When he did the same, he found much of what he considered fact was more of an opinion, and even things accepted as scientific fact was in actuality dogmatic scientism. Jeran can be found all over the place, on YouTube, on his own site, on his own radio show, as well as being in popular demand on other people's shows. We will list all his contact information below the video when this goes to YouTube, and we'll mention it again at the end of the show. Jeran has also been an anarchist for many years and has taken his beliefs into action by getting out of the system to the best of his ability. He no longer has a bank account, he has homeschooled his son, and he has looked outside the box for a long time. This last year, he has researched deeply into what constitutes the reality we've been taught and are currently being indoctrinated by the system that wishes us to stay deaf, dumb, and blind to the evidence right in front of our eyes. With all that said, welcome back, Jeran. I'm really happy to be talking to you face-to-face this time.
Well, thank you. You're actually my favorite interviewer or talk show host because you were my first.
Well, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
so most people will know you via your YouTube name, which you call Jeranism.
Correct.
And you've made a lot of really amazing videos. And so far, I have not seen you put out one little bit of fluff, which I really appreciate.
Thank you.
So could you please tell the audience why you use the word Jeranism to describe your YouTube page?
Yeah. If I had to do it all over again, I would probably change that just because of the connotation that goes with the ism part of it. But the reason why is because when I had gotten away from religion and then kind of looked into being an atheist and then saw that was a religion also, when I came out of that, I kind of started to look into deism. And it didn't quite fit me either, but I felt like I just like the word deism. You don't hear a lot of people, if you ask them what religion they are, how often do you hear deist? It's just something people don't say. So I thought, well, it's more like meism. I was telling my wife, it's my own way. So from meism, it went to Jeranism. And that was it. It was just, the original was a Tumblr blog where I was just posting little bits about NASA and how I thought that they were deceiving us. And yeah, when the whole thing started, it wasn't even in regards to a flat earth or anything like that. It was simply, I knew we were being lied to. Religion was lying on one end. Then I had found lies in science. It was kind of like, man, we're just getting hit all over the place with these lies. So I just turned it into Jeranism.
Okay, I thought it would be useful for people to see where that came from because I really like the story behind it. And you've coined some other words, or maybe you didn't coin them, but a lot of us who are questioning what our world actually looks like have used the word scientism over and over again. And so whenever we add that ism to it, it kind of creates that special air of dogmatic, whatever you want to call it, that kind of gives you a hint as to what you're going to be experiencing.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because after you wake up, there's things from before that kind of come back to haunt you. Like, I still love my wedding date, 11/11/11, love it to death. And I get people all the time when I say that, I say, 33, he's a Mason, and it, I tell them all the time, I say, I'm not changing my wedding date, so you can call me whatever you want.
Exactly.
That was in 2011. It was way before my wife and I woke up. But around the time that we started to see some synchronicities in the world and us coming together and seeing 11/11 on the clock a lot, and it just became kind of our little thing, text each other 11/11. So it was kind of cool. And then when we got engaged in 2010, January of 2010, we said, well, let's start looking at dates in 2011. And we just thought real quick, I wonder what the date is, 11/11/11. There's no way it's a Saturday. Well, we looked it up and it was a Friday, and we said, that's not going to work. But then we realized that that's Veterans Day. So people all have work off. It's like it's a weekend. So we said, let's do it. So easy for me to remember. I'll never forget. So that's one less thing.
That comes in handy. That does come in handy.
But I get a lot of people who say, like, what's with the numerology? And I said, well,
brother. Well, you know what? I would just look at it as you've got 3 super numbers lined up in a row. So
there you go. See,
11 is one of the super numbers.
She was number 33 in basketball through her high school career, and I was number 22 in my baseball career. So then you've got the 11/11. It was kind of all fit perfectly.
Yes, I agree. And don't worry about freakazoids who keep giving you crap over it.
No, I don't worry too much.
Yeah. So you and I spoke last April for the first time, and you were just kind of barely getting started. You'd been kind of really digging into this whole flat earth concept since February, I believe. And so I was able to find a few of your YouTubes and was real impressed with them. And I had been introduced, probably 5 minutes before you did, to the whole concept of gravity being a magic sauce. Somebody actually said that to me, and it just launched me totally into another direction. And you couldn't find a bigger Trekkie or a space geek than me. And to see that all starting to crumble before my eyes was a little disappointing, but I'm kind of a truth freak too, so I adapted pretty well. So in that period of time, since you started digging into this, and you've been on all kinds of shows and you've been watching the ISS, etc., for some time now, what do you think has been accomplished in this arena in that last year?
For me personally, I guess a lot of I've gotten a ton of emails from people that have always felt the way I have and been unable to say it. Also, I think bringing to light some of the things that people may have not seen before. Many people just were taught certain things, or we were all told certain things, like the water going down backwards in the southern hemisphere, the Coriolis effect. What does it affect? What doesn't it affect? There were so many things that before were kind of convoluted, but everyone just assumed that they led to the truth. And I think, excuse me, for the past year, we've done a good job of kind of separating out what is true and what is not. And then from that, we're able to try and break down a little bit further the lies that are still there. And one thing I would have thought honestly would have happened is there would have been more things shown to me that would maybe prove the ball, and those things haven't come. And that's why I continue to do what I'm doing, because now I'm seeing that I guess I understand now more than a year ago what they did and why they did it. I think back then I was kind of confused as to, do they not know? Did they just lie on purpose? I guess I was kind of lost as to the reasons behind it. And now I still don't know the exact reason, but I guess I can rationalize lots of different reasons why they would have had to do that. For instance, if they would have thought in, let's say, 1700 or 1600 that it was a ball, let's just say that they thought that. And then as years went on, say the beginning of the 21st century or 20th century, any of that time, if they would have realized they were wrong, they wouldn't have been able to admit it. And they would have had to continue the lie, because otherwise they're admitting, the church was right, we were wrong, we should have never second guessed them. And they couldn't do that, obviously. So I kind of see it from that angle. And then I also see, with quotes by Edwin Hubble and people like that, clearly science has a preconceived agenda. They want to go away from God as much as possible. Now, if that's because they don't believe in God, or that they are worshiping the antithesis of it, regardless of that, they clearly don't want God anywhere near their science. And so if a test result comes out with, it could be A, it could be B, but A could mean God and B absolutely means no, then they're going to go with B. And they're going to start pushing things in that direction. And, Edwin Hubble said it best when he found that galaxies were going away from the Earth. From his perspective, from our perspective on Earth, all the galaxies are going away from us, which would lead anybody to believe that you're the center. You must be. How else could everything be going away from you unless you're the origination point? So he had a quote that he basically says to keep from the absolute horror of being the center and important earth, we need to look at things a different way. And that's when they went into the homogeneity of space, basically saying, no matter where you are, everybody sees the same thing. So that means even the galaxy far away from us, looking back this way, they also see all the galaxies going away from them, which makes no sense in reality. But this is kind of what I started to see is, okay, it makes sense now that they just kept making decisions and pushing things in the direction that would lead people to not look into the church, not look into religion, not look into spirituality, not look into consciousness, because even in science, there is no real explanation for consciousness in science. So it just seems like science has gone the wrong way. They're not at all what they were intended to be. What we were taught in school, I used to love the idea of science, and I still do. If you're talking about science being the scientific method, laying out a hypothesis, trying to test against your guesses and really trying to debunk everything, that's how you're going to find the truth. But when you go in with preconceived notions or you go in with a bias, then you're not really doing the scientific method. You're just playing favorites.
Exactly. And I agree with you 100% in that direction, because I think it was real important for the controllers to find some way to negate the power of being a geocentric plane or whatever this is. Mm-hmm. It also creates the concept of Big Bang, evolution, survival of the fittest, and all that nonsense that puts us on a level that is certainly not special among living beings. And, right. Just to keep us as helpless and hopeless and powerless as we can. And that's definitely one way to do it.
Yeah, it's probably the best way, because otherwise, if you realize that we're all created and we're all here for the same reason, then there's no reason anybody's more important than you. But when you've reduced people to believe they're animals, then you think of animals like you've got the zookeeper and the zoo animal. And the zookeeper is clearly the one who makes the decisions for the zoo animals. And that's kind of how I think it works on Earth. That's how they want it to work. They want it to be, you need us, we're important, we're powerful. You aren't able to do things on your own. We'll take care of you. We'll help you get Medicare. We'll help you buy food for your kids when you can't afford it. They want to be that answer, but they're the ones causing the problems.
Sure. And that's the Hegelian dialectic right there.
Absolutely.
So why do you think it's important that we even know what kind of world we live on? I've asked all my guests that have come on with their version of flat Earth this question, and I think it's a really important question. So what would your answer be?
Word the question again, or say the question again.
Okay, why do you think it's important that we know what kind of world we live on?
I think it's essential. I think it's the foundation of everything. If you're going to do anything, you have to have that base. You have to have that foundation. Otherwise, you're just lost. I mean, it'd be like putting somebody in a city that they don't know anything about the city or even what city they're in, and then telling them to navigate through it or go through this month. But if they've got no direction, no idea, no clue, then you've just given them an impossible task. They're just going to wander around and basically waste time and do nothing. And at first, growing up, because I grew up religious, I thought that the Bible was kind of that guidebook, and maybe it was intended to be. But I certainly think now, when I look in it, I see plenty of reason to not see it quite so much as that guidebook anymore. So I think there's truth in it. I think there's important things in it. But I really do think that we're not really given anything other than our brains, our heart. That's what we're given to navigate this world. And so if somebody has put false things in your mind, if somebody has basically set you up for disaster, well, then your only chance to recover from that is to refine your foundations, to refine the truth. So I think that for me, it's made a big difference. yeah, do I feel like now I wasted the first 35 years of my life, whereas before I probably didn't? That's probably true, but also I think that I'd much rather do that than to be lost forever.
Well, sure. Plus the 35 years. Hang on, let me get this dog out.
For once, Buster.
Perfect timing, as usual.
It's usually my dog doing it, so I'm actually happy. My dog's not the bad one for once.
Yay. So the 35 years that brought you to the point where you could discover this is certainly not in vain, because look at the contrast you have now.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we always talk about how amazing it is that we had to go through what we went through to get here. And it really took, I mean, if I would have married anyone else or somebody who wasn't a Christian, or I wouldn't be here. It just had to be, everything had to work out perfectly. We both worked in retail. We both saw the way that was going. Then I grew up strictly Catholic. She grew up Christian. So it took all that. And it really took us together. I tell the story probably too much, but we actually had to lay in bed and ask God for a year to research whether or not what we believed was true. And I think that's important, for as hard as it was for us to ask that and to get going on that road. When I look back now, I'm like, man, why would I ever have had an issue with that? Because how could God have an issue with that? If God were true, then if you're saying, please allow me a year to really believe in you, to really find you, rather than just to listen to what my mom and grandmother said, or listen to what the pastor says and just blindly believe, there's no way that that's what God would rather have than for you to go out and actually look and leave no stone unturned and see if you found and came back to God. And we certainly did. It may not be the same idea of God that we came back to, but I think it's a better one. So
I agree with you, because I've been around that same kind of mulberry bush. I was raised as a Mormon, 35 years. You get pretty indoctrinated after 35 years, believe me. And
tough to kick that, I know.
Yeah, and it's tough to leave an organized religion that has its hooks in you in so many ways, like that religion does. On the other hand, if you are one of these rebels that have found each other, and you're not satisfied with somebody else telling you their version of truth, then you do what you have to do to be able to walk your own talk and to stay in integrity. And so for me, as far as the journey goes to get here, there's been a lot of bumps along the road, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I've already explored, like you did. I already explored atheism. I already explored all the other versions of isms, except for the one that just says, I was created by an intelligent design, life force, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And I'm comfortable with that now.
Yeah, maybe I do need to change the channel to meism, because you just described it perfectly. That was the intent. If I would have known at that time that I was going to talk to anybody other than my wife and I, I would have probably named it something different. But at the time, it was just like meism. And then you just said it perfectly. If that's the only truth we can come to, and that's where you can call it a slogan or a catchphrase or whatever. But when I say, open your mind, there's truth inside, it's because I don't think looking outside of that is advantageous. And I always talk about whether or not, when I faced my creator in my last day, if I could explain my life, and if I have to say, well, I trusted so-and-so, or I believed in so-and-so, or what so-and-so said, that'd be a hard thing to say when there's really no human on earth that I've ever met that gives me reason to believe that they're infallible or that they don't make mistakes. Every human I know, from my mom being probably the best person I know, all those people have made mistakes. They've made absolute mistakes, and they've told lies. There's no human that's ever could say they've never told a lie. So at that point, when people say, oh, well, the book was written by prophets, or the book was written with the inspiration of God, well, that could be true, but regardless, all humans make mistakes. So maybe they misunderstood God. Maybe they didn't understand what he meant when they wrote it down. So all those reasons tell me that I wanted to make sure that if there's anything I trusted, it was my eyes, God gave me eyes. And so when I look at the world, or when I look around me, there's certain things that I pretty much have to chalk up to being actual facts. Like, I'm not spinning. It's just, I think you'd have to give me some really, really good evidence to get me to say, you're right, I'm going to forego the fact that I don't feel it. I'm going to forego the fact I don't see it, and I'm just going to trust you. There's no way I could do that anymore. And at this point, when you look into it, because I thought it was proven, and when you look into it, there is no proof that you are spinning. So if there's not proof, then why would you ever believe that? And the reason why is because people want to trust scientists. They want to trust men that they think are smarter than them, because they don't feel comfortable in trusting themselves. They're scared of trusting themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And you could expand this beyond scientists. You could expand it to any authority figure.
Absolutely.
And don't tell me that people in authority don't have an agenda that keeps them in authority. So, expanding beyond science, expanding beyond religion, and looking at the world that we're living in, and all of these layers of leadership and bureaucracy and nonsense that feeds the beast. We've got to learn to trust ourselves and trust our authority and our ability to self-govern. And like you said, we were endowed with senses, we were endowed with a mind and a heart, and all of those things were intended for us to use for discernment, and to not set them aside in favor of somebody else's version of discernment.
Unless there's sufficient evidence. I'll always say that I'm not saying that we can always say our eyes tell the truth, or that we always can say what we feel is true, because there may be times when evidence is presented that tells the opposite. And if the evidence shows you that and you want to trust the evidence, then that's fine. And that's what I'm looking for, is I'm trying to say to NASA, to these space agencies, to these governments, all this stuff is you need to prove it to me now that I went to school before and thought that what I was being taught was true. I had no reason to second guess what was coming across from teachers' mouths. And now at this point, now I'm requiring people to prove it. And NASA has not done a sufficient job of proving any of their stories. And somebody said the other day, I think it was on one of the videos that guy Jeff C makes, and he was saying, oh God, I can't stand him. He's saying that, he brought up a picture of a blue whale from a Google search and said, well, maybe blue whales don't exist. I've never seen a blue whale. I just see them on these pictures. And I wanted to jump through the computer screen and say, blue whales are not stealing my tax money. And telling, there's a big difference here is we've got one group that is telling me where I live. Blue whales do not tell me anything. So I really, to be honest, could care less if they exist or not. The pictures tell me, well, why would somebody fake that? Nobody's going to fake a blue whale. It's probably real. End of story. That's all the evidence I need, because they're not impactful on my life.
Right.
But NASA is much different when the things that they're saying, they're the only ones responsible for telling us where we live. And
exactly.
When you see these things that are being taught in school, like evolution and, like the ball Earth and the spinning and the speeds going through space and the galaxies, that's all fine if it's true. And so I'm just trying to say, what's the big deal with asking for proof? And you've got people who will flip a lid because you dare question science. And it's like, look, all I'm doing is I'm doing science. I'm trying to debunk the current standing belief. That's what science is. And I'm getting yelled at and told that it's already been proven. And it's like, well, science can't prove things to be true. It can only, get you closer to the truth by always being the best accepted truth. But it can't just say this is true now, because you never know if something's going to come up later that disproves it. So sure. I have such a problem with that, because I really don't think, if anything, I'm doing something good, because let's say I'm completely wrong. Let's say that come to find out that the Earth is a sphere like we've all been taught, spinning, flying through space. Let's say that that's true. Well, by me questioning it, all I'm doing is getting other people to say, hey, you know what? I don't really accept the current evidence either. Show us the truth. And then if you have NASA or you have Neil deGrasse come out and do a 2-hour show on PBS or on Channel Fox or whatever, and he explains why we were wrong and how we got our facts mixed up, and they show the evidence, then we would all say, oh, science was right. So now we've validated the beliefs of everyone who already trusts it. And we've learned through science that we were wrong, and going forward, that only betters humanity. But the problem with it is we're asking those questions and we're not getting any answers. We're getting ridiculed. We're getting, crazy messages and emails and angry people and frustrations. And, that's not what we were hoping for. It was never my intent for that. I really wanted to see people either prove it or realize that we need to tell them to prove it. And so I hope that we're at least at that point now, that a lot of people are waking up and saying, okay, we do need him to prove it, because it's not sufficient what they've given us.
Exactly. And I'm going to circle around to that again here in just a couple of minutes, because there's something about this conflict that has been created by the globers and the flatters, for want of a better word, that is disturbing to me. So I want to discuss that. But if you were to look back over all of the things you've researched and studied and learned, what would you say is your best proof that we do not live on a spinning ball?
Well, you have to start with your own feeling. So, I mean, I've never felt like we were spinning, and I can remember, and it wasn't a lot, 5 or 6 times in my life where you kind of walk out the front door and I just kind of stopped for 2 seconds and looked at the world like, how could they say we're spinning? Or it just kind of takes you, and then you're like, well, I must be an idiot. It's true. That's science has proven it. And you move on with that day. And I remember in 2nd grade questioning it, and just kind of raising my hand 2 or 3 times and saying, but I don't get it. I don't understand what, it doesn't make sense to me. When I saw the gravitron at the park or the fair, and you see everyone flying to the outside of it, and you think in your mind, well, wait a second. I thought, why is gravity pulling us to the inside, but everyone on the gravitron is being thrown to the outside? So there was a lot of things I could never really rationalize, but I just got over them. But I think probably the biggest turning table was water always finding its flatness. And then when I questioned that, because I said, well, there must be some explanation. My wife and I went out and measured the distance, the 4 miles. Yeah. And I thought from that we would get somebody to kind of give us what we're doing incorrect. And what I found out is that the definition of a sphere is that all spots on a sphere are level. That is the definition of a sphere, because all spots on the sphere are equal distant to the center. So this is their way of describing that away. Since gravity pulls to the center, means wherever you are right now and wherever I am, we're both equal distant from the center. So if you're both equal distant from the center, then we're both flat. We're both level. But it's crazy, and that's what I mean by the idea of living on a ball is it may work on paper, but it doesn't work in reality in my mind. Now, again, if somebody took a spaceship outside of Earth and showed the camera looking back that there's people on the bottom of a ball and people on the top, then you could, well, I guess what they taught us is correct. There must be some force pulling everybody to the center. But they don't show that. They don't show what I think they would need to show to prove that. They just expect you to believe it. And, Neil deGrasse, like I'm sure you saw B.O.B., the rapper, comes out and starts making some claims that the Earth is flat. And Neil deGrasse goes on Comedy Central and says, the Earth isn't effing flat, and this is gravity, and drops a mic. And that's how they prove it. And you've got somebody here who's got millions of people who listen to his music, millions of people who might follow. I think he's got 3.5 million people on Twitter. You think that would be an opportunity for somebody like Neil deGrasse to be who he looks like he should be, which is that kind of connection to science that maybe is hard for people to find, because you think of scientists as being kind of uptight in a lab coat, glasses. And then you've got Neil deGrasse or Bill Nye. These guys are kind of the liaisons, if you will. So that I just would have loved to see him take that opportunity to teach rather than to act like holier than thou. And it's below him to have to teach someone.
Exactly. Yeah. Just condescending and just being a clown.
Just being a clown. There you go. Said it perfect. So I think those 2 things were my best evidence. But again, it just comes down to what you see from NASA and things like that I guess I could never explain this in words, but if something is real, I'd be able to tell. And that's all I can say. And I can't speak for other people. That's just me. When I look at that ball spinning when the ISS is going over it, everything inside me screams, I don't live there. So I don't live there. I mean, they would have to show a much better proof than just saying, yes, you do, because my body tells me I don't. So
exactly. And they've hoped in so many ways to divorce us from our own sense of self and our own ability to trust ourselves and all of that we've already discussed, that they just, I guess they assumed they could continue to just go on and say, well, because we said so.
Well, the scariest thing is they may be right, because I do think that there's about a 90%, 10%, and I don't mean 10% of people believe what I do. It's much less than that, but there's probably 10% that are still awake enough to question and to maybe change their mind. But it's kind of frightening to see the amount of people that they have who almost seem like drones at this point. Now, I have seen quite a few people change, so I'm certainly not saying that it's like it's over, count us out, throw in the white towel. And in fact, I think the one strength that we have that I've noticed is once somebody wakes up, they can't go back. So because it's
that's the truth.
Right.
Absolutely. How do you unknow something once you have everything manifesting it to you in all of your daily reality? You just can't unknow something.
No, and that's one thing I think is huge on our side, is that like I said, I was telling you yesterday on Globebusters that I said, yeah, we may have 10,000 people who believe it now, but at least next week it's not going to be 9,000, that it will either be 10,001 or 10,002. So that's kind of something that can kind of lead you to keep moving forward, because in any other kind of movement, or if you were trying to pass lies or trying to pass disinfo, well, you'd always be worried that your lie was going to be found out, that you were going to go from 10,000 people to 1,000. But when you're talking about the truth, that's one thing you don't have to worry about, to where if you're the elite, if you're in the, a senator, if you're in Congress, or if you're Obama's camp, you do have to constantly be worrying about what do people believe? What do people know right now? Because we don't want it to ever go down. They want to make sure that people keep believing what they've been pushing. And that's not a good night's sleep for NASA, when you go to bed every night not knowing if you're going to wake up tomorrow and somebody found something out. Where I sleep fine at night, and I just wake up hoping somebody found something that would propel us closer. But I know that there's nothing that could happen that's going to, at this point, set us back, because they've had a whole year to do anything, to show us anything. And all they've done is help separate a little bit better what was lied, what were the lies about. Like, I always go back to the Coriolis and to whoever made up the lie about water going down the opposite way in the Southern Hemisphere. To me, it just seems like you would only make up the lie if you're trying to build evidence for your false beliefs. That you just have
exactly. And that's what all of those manufactured proofs have been about, so it's just to buoy up the premise, because they can't debunk it now. They're in too deep,
Right.
So I have a question from a viewer. It is, have you or anybody else proven the calculations of the curvature of the sphere, that 8 inches per mile squared? Did that come through NASA? Did that come through a mathematician? Was that Pythagorean theorem? Where did that come from?
Through AutoCAD. Now, here's the weird thing about it, is that it's an impossible mathematical equation, because the curvature comes back underneath your feet. So picture you're standing at the top of a ball, and you're trying to figure out what the curvature is going away from you. Well, at a certain point, it goes backwards. So there's
comes
not
back
really
your direction. Yeah.
right. And then at an extreme distance, which would be what? So the diameter of Earth is like 8,000. So at that 8,000 miles on a ball curvature, well, then the curvature would be 0, which wouldn't make any sense, because it's all the way around. You're just underneath your feet. So I think it's, they say the 8 inches squared is good up to a certain distance. I always use the Hawaii distance, because I know that it still counts from California to Hawaii. That's 2,500 miles. It's a good number to use, because it's also the distance from California to New York, or California to Florida. So I think those are good people can mentally picture that distance.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do that math, it's funny, I was looking at an old post I made, and this is when I very first had problems with the curvature. I thought it was 8 inches per mile. I didn't know it was squared, which I've come to find out 8 inches per mile would be a slope, not a curve. So at the time, I made a big post on Tumblr that said, this is outrageous. The distance between Florida and London would have 2,000 feet of curvature. I said, that's a half a mile of curvature, people. That would be impossible. Well, come to find out, it's like tons of miles. And I thought,
way more than that. Yeah.
I thought 2,000 feet was crazy. But when you look at the 2,500 miles, so California to Hawaii, and you do the math, it comes out to 789 miles. And that's just outrageous to think that there's that kind of, and a lot of people will come to me and say, I'm saying the wrong word. If I say hump, or if I say that kind of curvature, if I say, I guess the correct way would put it, that kind of drop, that there is a drop from, if I'm standing in California, there's a drop of 789 miles. But you're going in a distance of 2,500 miles. So the drop is a curve. It's a ball. It's a hump. And that we know the airplane pilots don't descend that much. I've heard people say, oh, well, the plane is going down slightly. You just don't notice it. It's going down. But then you say, well, what about the plane coming from Hawaii to California? Are they also
going up? Yeah.
Right. And the way that they explain that away is they put us all at the top of the ball. That's the only way they can make it work, which I have problems with that. How can everybody be below my horizon, which would be true on that case? It means that you're right now below my horizon, and somebody else in South America is below my horizon, and somebody in Alaska. But then to them, everyone is below their horizon. So when you start talking like that, you're getting metaphysical. You're getting into thought processes and not reality, because you can't be two places at one time. I can't be both above your horizon and below your horizon. Exactly. So those kind of things are the things I don't think they've done a sufficient job in explaining away. And the curvature formula, it certainly is correct up to about maybe 4,000 miles, 3,000 miles. After that, it's going to get funky. You can't really measure that anymore.
Well, I think that would be adequate, though, to determine that nothing is what we've been told it is. Yeah. Right. So
anybody who wants to do an experiment and you're anywhere near the beach, go to the beach and watch a boat head off towards the horizon and look at your watch. My wife and I have done it. And I mean, this is probably the biggest thing to us, because they tell you that horizon is 3 miles away. That's all you can see until the ball would start to fall away from you on a ball earth. Well, we've sat and watched boats that look like they're going. Now, again, I couldn't tell you if they're going 30 or 40 or 25, but let's say on the low end, say they're going 25 miles an hour. We've sat there and watched them for an hour, and they continue to go, and we get our camera out and zoom in. And after an hour or hour and 15 minutes, they're gone. Now, that means that they went at least 25 miles, maybe 30, maybe 40 miles, and we still saw them. So that is all the evidence you need that either the ball is 150,000 miles in circumference, not 25,000 miles, or there's another reason why the boat is leaving my view. And when we watch it, it's clearly the boat is leaving your view because it gets harder and harder to see. And also the water that's in front of you, the ocean, the waves, the swell, is the first thing that you see. And so slowly, as that boat gets further and further away, even the smallest waves in front of you begin to start to cover that far away boat. Sure. And it's one of the most amazing things with our eyes. It's just the way our eyes work. I always try and point out to people that when they stand at a beach, it's hard to even rationalize that all the water that you're looking at is below your feet. It really is hard to see that because the water appears to rise to your eye level. Well, I always ask people again, is that what you would see at the beach if you lived on a ball and if all that water was below your feet? And it certainly is not what you would see. There would be no reason in the world for the water to rise to your eye level. It would be as if you're creating an uphill and then a downhill of the ball, which is not the case. It has to be going below you. It has to be going away from you, falling off the edge of the sphere. And you certainly would not see what we see at the beach. I think it's one of the best evidences. In fact, you just do a video just on that because it's there's no explanation for that. Nobody can explain why the ball would show you those characteristics. It appears that the water goes up from your feet and then it goes down, and that just wouldn't happen on a ball. It would go away and down.
Exactly. Well, not to mention the fact that nobody can get water to stick to any other sphere.
No.
You can't duplicate that no matter how you try. So that's where the magic sauce of gravity always comes in to explain that one away.
I know. Have you seen any of the videos by the Flat Earth asshole?
Oh, I love him. He's one of my new favorites.
I know, it's great. It's a lot of things that I wish I could have said at the beginning, and as I started to get into it, I realized people didn't like me cussing so much. I tried to calm that down. And I see him, I'm like, man, I could have just gone out there and just cussed up a storm like that. But I love the things that he says about the, just things that I've thought about too. Why is there no moons orbiting our moon and mini moons orbiting that mini moon? And it's like all these things are given these qualities, and they just don't make sense with gravity. I said, who elected who would be the center of gravity? I mean, how could Earth be the center of gravity, but also Mars be the center of its gravity? That it doesn't make sense. At the Big Bang, I picture things flying out and immediately coalescing into a ball and being done. If gravity pulled everything to the center, why were things still flying away? Why were things doing their own little thing? And when the sun collapsed, or whatever they say happened when the solar system started, and then it branches out with all this dust particles and rocks, why wouldn't it have all just been one planet? There should be one giant planet. How did they say, did Mars go off and say, I'm going to be a center over here, and Earth said, I'll be one over here, and Jupiter said, I'll be one over here, and it just makes no sense. It just doesn't. It's a great story if you want to write a little fictional book and you want to make a cartoon or something. It's a great place to start, but it's certainly not a good place to start for reality.
Absolutely. So let's kind of circle back to the infighting that we have within this movement, for want of another word for it. Something is kind of bothering me, and I would like to get you to weigh in on it. And that is that the videos have gone viral. I mean, you've got like 1.5 million views just on yours alone. And it's been, you've been around longer than some of the others, but you can also do a Google search and you can see a cajillion searches for flat Earth or some derivation of that. So it's not that people haven't been exposed, or that we haven't shared, or that we haven't told somebody about it. But it seems like people are polarizing now over this issue. Some of them are polarizing towards the biblical references that they need to prove that it's true to them because they believe the Bible. And others are polarizing towards, well, I can't see it, feel it, hear it, smell it, taste it. So for me, it's not true. So we've got all these different camps. Some of them are trying to prove it true. Some of them are just defending the current paradigm. And it's creating another division among people. And it's not like we don't have enough divisions, right? Our colors are fighting, our ethnicities are fighting, where we live is fighting against where somebody else lives, and our beliefs are fighting each other, and we've got left, right, political paradigms and things. So I've become kind of concerned about this, just from the point of view of, if we can't get past our own personal prejudices, and all we're going to do is fight about this, how has this produced an outcome that we could say is favorable?
Well, I would say that it hasn't yet. The way I look at it is, it's the most important point in everything that I've seen, and I've looked at everything, and we know what's going on all around us. But I do think that what's happening is an overtaking, like a communist overtaking. Mm-hmm. It is very centered around mind control. It's centered around disinformation. It's centered around propaganda. That is how they're getting away with everything that they do. So when that's the case, turning one thing inside out and finding out the truth about it is not going to help the overall situation. Because if you were to find out that things that maybe Obama's doing with gun control, let's say, if you were to prove that to people, well, they would be like, oh, okay, well, oh, he was doing that. But the things going on everywhere else would remain the same. It wouldn't really change the world. Same thing with like what's going on with the NSA. These are things that are different elements of the package that they're trying to seduce Americans with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's going on with the shape of the world is on so much of a higher level that I think it can change it all. It's the one thing that if we could get through to people, that everything else would fall apart, that people would then say, and the reason most of them will not even think about it is because they say there's no way anybody could pull off a deception that big. But if they ever realize that they could, then they would no longer question, was 9/11 an inside job?
Sure.
Was San Bernardino really a massacre? Was Sandy Hook real? There's people who question those things because they say, well, two people couldn't hide a blowjob in the White House, so how could they hide this?
You're right.
And, they don't quite understand the difference between those two deceptions where, one is between two people to where people love to gossip and I saw this happening and this girl was with this guy. Those kind of things come out all the time. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company that is maybe siphoning money from the top and those kind of things don't get found out. Those kind of things are well constructed, and when people's very existence is on the line because they know they're going to go to jail for years, and that's how I kind of look at this whole conspiracy that the government's doing. It's not as simple as, well, somebody's just going to rat on you and that's going to be the end of everything. A lot of these people are under strict orders and probably know that they could be taken out at any time if they revealed some of the things that they know. And that's just how this whole thing operates. And that's why I think that if we could get this truth out there, if we could get people to realize that, and I don't even need to say that I need them to realize that we have been lied to, but realize that we could have been lied to. And by doing that, I hope people will look into it, because when they do, they will see that the things that they were told were facts aren't quite facts.
Right.
If anything, it's a decision that they made. They could have gone this direction or this direction. They chose to go that direction. That alone should tell people it's not quite what we were told. So that's kind of what I think. I hate the infighting too. It's the worst thing I could even imagine. I've heard some things this week that make me so sad. People calling out other people because they're doing this or that, and they must be shills. It's just like,
well, and it's gotten to that point where if somebody disagrees with you now, we start calling them troll and shill.
Right.
And it's ridiculous because unless there is justification for that, I think we need to back off those labels. Now,
Absolutely.
Having said that, there are plenty of people on the various YouTube videos that make themselves pretty obvious in, with the kind of terminology they use, or the fact that they ask the same old questions over and over and over and over. And, you've kind of been there, done that, and it wears on you. So,
but I think also people need to realize they're in charge of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The way I look at it is I choose who I watch on YouTube and who I don't. And
mm-hmm.
There's certain people I used to watch that I don't anymore, and people who come out now and that I watch more than others that I've watched before.
Sure.
And I make that decision based on their content. And if somebody wants to talk about something I don't agree with, then I can choose not to watch them or not. If somebody wants to start charging money for their videos, I can choose to pay the money or not.
Right.
So those things all to me seem trite. They don't seem like it's a make or break kind of situation. And I see so many people who act like they believe in this free country. They believe in it unless you do something that they don't agree with. Which,
oh yeah, definitely.
The whole point of a free country, it doesn't matter what you agree with. Nobody should do anything that impacts your life.
Mm-hmm.
You should be free to do. And so when I see people come out with videos where they're yelling and screaming about somebody else because they're doing something that doesn't impact their life, it doesn't impact you. So why are you screaming and yelling about that? Just let them be. If you disagree with them, disagree with them. I just see too many people who act like it's somebody's doing things differently than my way, so I need to make a big stink about it because it's not.
Sure, and it makes me uncomfortable because I want to make sure that everybody agrees with me, that I'm invested in my belief system, and if you challenge that, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm going to make you feel rotten about it.
Right. Yeah, and it just is crazy. most recently the couple of videos that people have come out with about Mark and Patricia, because they want to start a flat earth network, that they're still going to be giving free videos and doing everything that they've been doing, but they said something about charging $5 a month for the archives. Now I hear that. I don't have $5 a month to spend on something like that, so I won't watch their videos that are on archives. I would watch what I can that are live, but I don't think that I'm in a place to say, well, I wouldn't do that, or this person shouldn't do that, because I know how hard it is to do this kind of stuff. And if there is a way to be reimbursed for your time, then I think somebody should get that. And if they can't, then they need to make the decision like we had to make, which, I mean, we lost our house, but we made a little bit of money because we weren't upside down in it. And by doing that, it gave me a little bit more time to continue doing this, to where we were at a point where I was going to have to stop. But we kind of chose to lose the house, and truth was more important to us. And so that's basically what we, and it also costs money to host the archives from shows like that.
It does.
Mark, we're doing. And so I just think that people don't understand that there's so much wicked stuff going on in the world. So many people making money for nonsense. I mean, you've got credit card companies that are basically doing nothing. They're making up numbers and adding numbers, and money is not even real like we think of it. And they're making $32 billion a year, and they're charging 29% interest. And people have no problem doing that. They'll go swipe their credit card every day. But Mark and Patricia asked for $5, and it's time to flip out and call them shills and call them names. And
sure. And I think people should just, I mean, a lot of us are already doing this. You vote with your time, you vote with your wallet.
Absolutely.
And nobody's forcing you to go watch their show or anybody else's show.
Nope. And the market decides those things. And
yes.
Do we all wish that we didn't live in this world that is run the way it is? Absolutely. But we also need to eat. And so there is sometimes that you might do something that you don't want to do, but it's reality. And I don't think that that's asking for $5 for archive is not feeding into the system like people think it is. I mean, that's a very small thing. And, you know, I know you've heard me talk about how I think schools should be run.
Yes. And let's go there, because that's, then I want to, one more time, I'm going to circle back with something else, but we need to talk about that, because I think that's a fantastic idea that almost anybody could start at almost any time. And that would be the action aspect of freedom that I like to see people contributing to.
Yeah, I just think it'd be easy, because we don't realize how many people there are in this country. I think it's hard even across the world, but even in this country, there's so many people, and we could do so many things if we thought on a larger level. Right now, things are very sectioned off, and we have these universities and these high schools and these grammar schools. And I just think it'd be better if we realized we don't need to be sending people to college and sending people away for classes when they're really just wasting money and coming out of college in debt. And the way I looked at it, I said,
and stupid.
Yeah. And you could have, if you agree with somebody's, let's say we all find this physics teacher that teaches really good physics, and he doesn't go into the ball earth, or let's say he's just teaching really good facts that we would all call facts, things that are observable, things that are testable. He also teaches the kids to expand their minds, discuss things. It's not so much of this is fact, now you're going to take a test and you repeat after I say, but give people the opportunity to discuss, collaborate. And that's the kind of teacher we all like. And we find somebody who's doing really good, and everybody puts their kid in a 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. class with this teacher. The teacher can wake up. He knows he's only doing a 2-hour class in front of, say there's 10,000 kids that are out there. And then you could think that those 10,000 kids each pay a penny for that class. And then you're talking about what, 1,000, no, what would that be? That's how good my math is.
Yeah, mine's not much better, but still for a 2-hour class.
Right. I mean, it'd be great.
That's fantastic. You bet. Plus, we're learning what will benefit us going forward in our lives. This guy is rewarded for being a reality-based thinker, and we're not putting our kids in a system that's going to teach them to be good little zombies.
Right. And I think that so many parents would do something like that if they were given some sort of opportunity like that.
I think so too.
And I just don't think, I understand why people have a hard time with the decision of homeschool or not, because to homeschool means you're lucky enough to not have to work. So
that's right.
To be home and teach your kids. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable leaving their kids home by themselves all day, which neither would I. It's, that's how you come home to parties. So
yeah, but let's say you have a group of 10 parents who have created a homeschool co-op, and everybody goes to Susie's house on Mondays for physics class because Susie can be home on Mondays. And so they get taught their physics class on Monday, and then they go to Mary's house on Tuesday because Mary can take the morning off, or she doesn't work Tuesday, and they can have their math class. So it's completely workable if we use the local level grouping of people to be able to facilitate one another's off days or on days.
That's beautiful. You're absolutely right. And I think that we would be so further along if we allowed kids in schools to think and not just regurgitate and repeat.
Of course, and to be learning things that they're actually interested in, and to have real-time application for that physics class. So your assignment for this week, kids, is to take what we talked about today and go out and put it in the real world and come back with your experiment next Monday. Right.
I think the whole idea of public schooling at this point is garbage. You just can't have it operate the way it does. It really is not advantageous to growth. It's not advantageous to discovery. The way that they teach physics and the way that they teach astrology and all these things are not meant for you to discover anything new. If anything, it's to discover more things that prove what you were taught. So
it's just a backup system for the control mechanisms. Yeah.
I look at 8th grade classrooms and I think, imagine if the teacher came in and said, this week we're talking about whether the earth is flat or whether it's a sphere. Who thinks it's flat? And half the class raises their hand. And who thinks it's okay? Now get into groups. Let's come up with some tests. Let's come up with some ideas. Let's discuss it. Let's debate it. They would have gotten done in 6 months more than we've done the past year trying to put these videos out. There would be more things discovered in that one classroom, let alone what classrooms across the country could come up with. So I think that we kill our kids' brains, and then we teach them that to be smart, the only thing you have to do is be able to repeat what smart people have already done. And so you've got people like Red's Rhetoric that thinks he is extremely intelligent. He thinks that he is, and he is. And it's sad because I tell him all the time, dude, you're smarter than those people at NASA. That's what you don't understand, is that they're fooling you and you're smarter than them. You just don't see that. You think because you can repeat things that they say is true, you're smart. But somebody who has a mind like that, he can memorize mathematical equations and he can repeat definitions like it's nothing. Now it's a different kind of smart, but they've taken somebody who's got a great brain and put him in a box to where he's not utilizing what he could have discovered in the world or what he could have invented would be far greater than what good is somebody who just repeats things. It's just we're going the wrong direction everywhere in this world. It's so sad because there's so many things we don't think about anymore. Think about representatives in Washington. Why are we doing that? Why? I have a cell phone. I can communicate. I can vote myself. I don't need a representative from my state to go and vote on things for me. That person doesn't know me and I don't know them. How are they my representative? It doesn't make any sense.
They're not. And neither is the Electoral College. All of that is just bogus. It's to create so much more distance between you and your so-called governing bodies that you're back into that helpless, hopeless, powerless mode again. And so every opportunity they have to stick you in that box, they're going to do that.
Right. And that's what they do. And I think sometimes we have blinders on. I do too, that I just, because we grew up this way, it's the way it is, the way it's always been. We kind of think there's no changing it. And really sometimes when I just think of starting all over, that's when I see things working. It's like,
it's going to have to be a restart. You can't fix a desperately broken system from within that desperately broken system. There's no way.
What you just said is what I meant. You say it so much better than I do. What you just said is perfect. What you just said is perfect about when I said what the flat earth I think can do. I don't think pecking at the little individual points can fix the mess. But I do think if you attack something this big and were to find out that it is the case, that it would make the whole thing crumble. Nobody's going to listen to the government tell you anything anymore when you say, no, you told me I lived on a ball.
Very true. And so just from the point of view, obviously somebody's here, holy smoke. From the point of view of the school classroom type situation, I think that could be done within the various other realms of the control grid that we're living in, by pulling something workable up alongside this system that is clearly unworkable, and allow the free market, if you want to call it that, or allow the competition to prove which has more value to the people.
Well,
so we could do it with our own banking systems. We could do it, with value of the individual being traded, however we all decide to do that. Or a school system that grows up alongside the mess that's passing for school now, or fill in the blank. There's all aspects of this system that could be rebooted in a way that would provide value, truth, reality, curiosity again for a change. And I think this is what's going to have to happen. And
I've learned more this year than I've learned in 35 years. I've learned more about the model of the ball earth. I mean, I think somebody who's a casual believer in the globe, and I would know 10 times as much as they do about how fast we're going and what the directions we're going and what the stars do, because I've looked into it, and it's opened my mind to be more curious. But I mean, one thing, I'm a bookseller, so this is just something that baffles me. We still have textbooks in college, and they're changed every year. So somebody prints out chemistry, whatever, and the 1993 edition and the 2016 edition, 2017 edition, and they cost like $80. And then the kid has to pay the 80. Then he has to try and sell it at the end of the year to somebody who's coming into that class and try and get his money because he's got to buy books. When we have ebooks, we have PDF books. Why are we not just, and then if you need to update it for the next year, you go into the PDF and you change a couple things, they should be 10 cents. There's no reason why. Oh,
of course there's no reason. But the purpose behind it is to keep you paying for their version of reality.
Absolutely.
And we're funding our own demise here because we keep paying them to give us information that is categorically bullcrap. And we keep sending our kids there because we have to work to be able to feed them. And so we are paying for our own enslavement, pure and simple.
Yeah, it's sad. We are. And I think people know that even on some level. You're not saying that they believe in the sphere of the ball, and that all aside, people know that what kids are coming out with in school is not helping them in their lives. I mean, school doesn't teach you how to pay your taxes, which I'm not saying that we should pay taxes, but I'm just saying things that people have to do if they're going to work. Because if you work, you pretty much have to pay taxes. I don't pay taxes, but that's because I don't fill out a W-2 or W-4. But what I'm saying is there's things like when I was in a sophomore year of high school, and this is not my parents' fault. My parents take blame for this. But they gave me a car when I turned 16. It was their rundown Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, 92. And I was driving that to San Jose to school every day. And I drove that car for a year and a half. And one day it puttered. And I was on the freeway and I pulled over and the AAA guy came and I said, I don't know what's going on with it. And he opened the hood and he looked inside and he peeked around and said, when's the last time you put oil in here? I said, you mean gas? He says, oil. I said, oh, I didn't know we had to put oil in it.
So your engine had seized up, essentially.
$4,000 engine.
Yeah.
My parents take responsibility for that because they realize that they never taught me that cars need oil. But I was going to high school.
Exactly.
Why are these things not taught to me? Why was I never taught to balance my checking account, or how finances worked, or how to budget, and just things that are important to kids that we should be teaching them in high school. Instead, I was being taught things that I will never need, like calculus or even algebra 2. I mean, if people want to get into that and that's their focus, then let them take a math class when they get to, their junior or senior year, if they're interested in math. But once you know your addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, you're probably okay for life. And I asked my son when he was still in school, I said, did they let you use a calculator in your math class? And he's like, no. Like, I don't understand why we it's like once you get the bases down as far as first through third grade, why would we not give kids a calculator? I don't understand that. I don't get what the
because they want to keep you in the 19th century, because this is how they taught back then. They didn't have calculators, and they were teaching people to be to go out on their dad's farm and just take over for their dads, or in this day and age, they're teaching you to just be a good little robot that can fit into a cubby hole or a niche in corporate world and just do what you're told. So there really isn't any reason for people to be motivated or for them to be moved past the indoctrination stage, because that's where they want you. They want you to be bowing to authority. They want you to never question. They want your brain tied up in knots, or else they wouldn't have created Common Core. And
that is.
So yeah,
those questions are terrible.
Oh, I have. It's horrific. My little grandson comes home and he just wants to pull his hair out because, it takes him 15 lines of words and numbers to get an answer to what is 2 + 3.
It's crazy. I saw one question that was it said, please estimate, and it gave the question 102 minus 77 or something. It said, but use estimation. And the kid answered the question correctly. He said 75. So that's what he estimated, which 102 minus 77 was 25. Well, he said the answer and they marked it incorrect because it said to use estimation, which would mean he should have gone the 102, rounded it to 100, and then the 77, or I forgot which way it went, but it was supposed to be not 75, it's supposed to be 80, or I'm sorry, it's supposed to be 30. But because of he got it right, and they marked it wrong because they said, no, you're supposed to estimate. It's like, no, you don't understand. I don't care.
Yeah, they want you to do their process. They don't want you to have the right answer. So if you get stuck in process, then you never arrive at anything that makes any sense to you.
No. And that's just, it's crazy. I can't picture why we would ever allow kids. I mean, the way the school system is set up is wrong anyway, there's no desire to grow, to be smart. You don't get to move up. We keep people in age groups. Like, so are all 8-year-olds equal in their brains? No. Some are behind. Some need to be treated different ways. Some need to be taught visually. Some have already got it and they should be up with some 15-year-olds. So why aren't we allowing that and moving people through and making good decisions for each person individually, rather than put 35 kids in a class to where the teacher's doing a teaching job that's probably sufficient for 3 of them. And that's the kind of the middle 3. Then you've got the other half falling behind and the other half is bored. So it's got to be the worst way to run it. And then, of course, the worst way to run things is the way we have them.
Is the way they do it. Exactly.
Isn't that funny? It's like this whole thing with drought we're having in California. It's a joke, man. I mean, there's no water here, yet we quickly built the Keystone Pipeline when we needed oil from Canada down to Texas. They built a tube system that runs oil right down there. But we've got the East Coast getting dumped on with rain and snow, and they're dumping it in the ocean because they have nothing else to do with it. But nobody stands up and says, hey, why don't we just build one of those pipes to run water to California where all of our agriculture comes from? I mean, if California was a country, it'd be like the 9th biggest economy. It would, but if you consider the underlying probabilities associated with why there's a drought, and you look at all the land grabs that are going on across the country, because they've all been sold to Russian industry or Chinese industry or whatever, a drought is another way to create an opportunity for a land grab. And if they're wanting us dead, which they seem to be pretty clear about, what better way to do that than to starve the people? And what better way to keep them from being able to stay alive than to reduce their access to water? Yeah.
So there is method in their madness, but it's pure madness.
It's madness. I think that they want to, and whether or not the earth is warming on its own, which I think that it goes through cycles, and I don't think that's any big deal. It's not a threat to people if it were to start warming. But what they want to do is they want to make it look like it's our fault, so that they can say when California goes so bad in the drought in a year from now where there's no water left, they're going to say, well, this is because you guys argued about climate change, and then they didn't do all these things that we wanted to do. So now we've got to move in and we've got to hand out the food and the water in this state. And that's how it's create the problem and then be the answer, like you said.
Absolutely.
That's all that they do. And that's been the key to them staying in control for all these years. It's every bit of everything that they've done in the past is a lie. And they know that they can keep teaching the lie. And, for history, it's the winners that write it. So it's the elite that write it. It's the ones in charge tell you what happened in the past. And do you think they're going to tell you the truth or tell you what allows them to stay
in power?
So that's what they do.
Well, and not to mention that we all still, well, not all of us, but a good portion of us still believe in the concept of authority, which is just mind-boggling to me. And so we allow that to continue because we keep thinking, we're thinking, well, that couldn't be a lie, could it? That couldn't be a lie. Surely these people have information that I don't have access to. So I'm going to defer to the experts. And how many centuries and generations have we deferred to experts who've been bald-faced liars?
Yeah, I think if people just saw human nature, it's when you get into that power position, all of a sudden you want to stay there. You don't like the idea of going back to being below that. And so you turn into the kind of person that makes decisions that would lead to you remaining where you're at.
Sure.
And that's so true, everywhere. But people just need to realize we don't need leaders like we have now. That I believe, just like the founding fathers did when they wrote that we're all given certain rights that cannot be taken away. And that's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when the government is now taking steps that is limiting your freedoms, limiting your right to assemble, your right to not assemble, your right to speak the way you want to, when those things start getting limited, we need to realize it's time to end that government because they're no longer protecting our rights. They are now infringing on our rights. Big difference.
That's what governments do every time. They always degenerate into tyranny.
And in fact, I love it when I bring that up. I tell people, look at the Bible. The Bible, it shows throughout the entire book that a governor or a person becomes king and they become corrupt. The whole book tells the story of every king was corrupt. They were all bad people. Maybe they weren't when they were not kings, but then they became king and they took concubines and they took multiple wives and they killed groups. And it just is so clear what happens when you have those corrupt governments. And, as much as I say I'm an anarchist, I do think that it's okay to have elected officials as long as they are doing the protecting of your rights. The second they stop doing that, then it's the people's job who have consented that, this person will speak on our behalf because we like the way he handles things and he looks out for us. As soon as they're not doing that, then you should be able to step right in and say, you're done. There is no question about it. We should all be able to.
And if we were to do that, we would have to do it at a local level because we can't do that with the type of reach that government has from this centralized area.
You can't have one person represent 350 million.
Exactly. So you have to keep it local and you have to keep it in a situation that is rotating on a frequent basis where everybody gets an opportunity to put in their 2 cents and be leader for this week or this month or this year or whatever. But it has to continue to be a flowing process where nobody gets too comfortable and nobody accumulates too much money or control.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's why we have a lot of the crime that we do is because people are without things that they need to live, money and food. And so they start doing things like robbing and I won't say all the time because certainly there's bad people in the world, but I think people want to be good for the most part. People want to be left alone. They want to be free. They want to not be left alone, like stay away from me, but they want to be secure in their house and be in their privacy. And they don't want to be infringing on other people's privacy. Yet
I agree. I think most people are good at heart, but they've been so brainwashed and they've been so damaged by authority and so damaged by systems that don't support autonomy or thought or abundance and prosperity.
Right.
Everything is a scarcity consciousness, and look what it's creating.
Do you think it's a communist-like regime that is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, me too. I mean, everything I've seen leads me to think that that it is an absolute authoritarian, totalitarian communist system that is done through propaganda. And once you own the media, your job's easy, and they don't have to worry about dissenters because they create the storylines. So, somebody asked me recently. I have a page where people can ask me questions if they like. It's called ask.fm/Jeranism, but kind of a cool place. And somebody asked me recently, they said, I don't think what you're saying is true, because if it was true, YouTube wouldn't allow the videos. Somebody would take them down. And I said, well, you just explained why they leave them up. As I said, because if they did take them down, then they're admitting that I'm saying the truth. And I said, so they're so confident that the 90% of people will be like you, will just say that there's no way those videos would be up if it's true. It's just stupid. It's some crackpot theory. And they've taught, it's like, you have to be pretty brave. You have to know that you've indoctrinated people pretty well to act like NASA, to act like the United States government does. And that it's an absolute sign that they have done everything that they
set out to do. Yeah.
They've done it, and they've done it well, because there's so many people who will sit there and yell about some of the things we're saying, and there's not proof for those things other than you were taught it. And they're willing to fight. They will fight you. They will, you helped me get away from it. But I mean, I had people attacking my email addresses so that I couldn't log into my emails. Who has time to do that? How could you be so in love with what you were taught that you're willing to try and stop me from reading emails? It's crazy that people are out there like that.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-boggling, and I wonder who they're employed by and what the purpose behind of it is.
Sadly, I don't even know if they're employed. Sometimes I think they just
don't have anything better to do but make trouble.
It shakes their very foundations to think that there's a possibility that what I'm saying could be anywhere near true, and they just want to make sure that it doesn't go on and doesn't continue with it.
Oh, sure. I've been attacked on Facebook for things that I post, just because it is uncomfortable, and because, how dare I make assumptions that, that the whole world has been lied to, right. and really virulent commentary, like language alert here, like I'm batshit crazy. Oh, yeah. And who says that, who is not threatened by something that's outside their comfort zone?
Right.
So I want to circle back to NASA, because there's something I want to ask you about, and this is rattling around in my head and it's driving me nuts. So you're probably aware that there's a flat earth card in the Illuminati card deck, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think this is? And how do you think this is playing a role in the plans that they have set in place for this so-called discovery? Do you think that they instigated this discovery for some reason, and that's why there's a card in the deck that talks about this?
No, but I think that they know that the ball isn't proven, and they know that it would eventually come out. And that's why they put it in. So I guess it goes with everything. It's basically, if you knew, when was the card game made? 70s, 80s?
87, I believe.
Okay. So at that time, you would have known things that were still going to happen. They may have not known when the buildings were going to come down, but they knew that they were built for that reason. A lot of people know that at the time it was built, it was the tallest building that there was. And if you think on a flat earth kind of way, the taller the building, the more your radio signal is propelled. Right. And so that's why they knew that building would eventually have to come down. And if it would come down by their own demolition, well, that costs you money. If you choose to knock your building down, you have to pay to build it back up. But if it's terrorists that knock your building down, well, guess what? It's the taxpayers who build your building back up. So, and somebody who makes money off the insurance scam. But I mean, all the cards that are in there seem like they were things that and some of them I don't even understand. So I haven't paid much credence to that. But I do think it's interesting that that card's in there. When people say things like, you said, what'd you say? Did they help it come out, or did they?
Yeah, did they put the flat Earth card in there because there was a plan at some point that they were going to allow this discovery to get out there? And the reason I'm asking that is precisely because of the Twin Tower argument, because there's a Twin Tower card in there as well. And there was all kinds of predictive programming going way back that talked about the destruction of the Twin Towers. So like you said, they were built to come down, essentially.
I think
so.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if NASA wasn't created to come down eventually as well, but in the meantime, to be a siphoning system for the quadrillions of dollars that they have taken from us.
Oh, I do think that. Okay, I mean,
utilize ostensibly for one purpose, but it's clearly not being used for that.
No, I do think that. I think that NASA was for them to continue the lie longer than they probably thought they could get away with it. So they come in 1958, they start doing their thing. Basically, they realize that they can pull off a moon hoax. And a lot of people don't realize how important the moon landing was. But when you look at the moon at night and you picture somebody standing on the moon or somebody went there, it's very easy for kids' brains to rationalize that we also live on a sphere. If there was not the fact that somebody has gone to the moon, then there is no example in your life that says anybody can live or stand on any kind of sphere. And so it would make a huge difference to people's thought process if it wasn't for we've been to the moon, that big round sphere in the sky that you see, somebody went there and stood on it. Then it just, your brain rationalizes the idea, oh, we live on a sphere too. How could we not? The moon's a sphere. Why wouldn't we live on a sphere? So, and you have to think about that too. To get somebody to believe in the flat Earth, they've got to then believe that we didn't go to the moon. Now, there's so few people that actually believe that. So maybe 20% of Americans question the moon landings, maybe 30%. I don't know, somewhere in there. But let's say 20%. So you really only got a small group of people that you can really convince even of what I'm saying is true, because the 80% is not even going to listen to that because they're still in that mindset of we had people stand on the big sphere in the sky. So this kid saying that the Earth is flat is a complete idiot, because why would we be flat but the moon be a sphere? They don't understand the whole thing.
Right. And that's a battle that I've been fighting too with various scientists and what have you who have looked through telescopes, and they say, well, Jupiter looks clearly spherical. It looks like the moon, which we know was a sphere because we know people landed on it. Right. And, you know, we have a sphere here and a sphere there. The thing that kind of blew me out of the water with the telescope aspect was that during the energy, if you want to call it that, of a solar eclipse, if you have a high-powered resolution on your telescope, you're not going to be seeing spheres out there. You're going to be seeing some funky light, crazy electrical show, because there's something about eclipses that makes those quote-unquote planets look really different.
Absolutely. And in fact, I had one of the craziest conversations with somebody on, he was messaging me on Twitter. We were talking back and forth. He kind of tricked me a little bit because he was coming as if he agreed with some of the things I was saying. Then he said, hey, I just have to tell you, I believe in heliocentricity. I believe in everything that science teaches. And he said, I just wanted to get an idea of where you were at. He said, I want to buy you a telescope. And I said, okay, if you want to, you know, I don't need one. He says, no, I want to buy you one. He says, even if you get it and you never talk to me again, it's yours to keep. I just think that if you saw that, you would change your mind. So we were thinking we were going to get one of those telescopes on a tripod with a little tube. And the thing arrived about a month ago in 2 50-pound boxes. He bought us a Dobsonian huge telescope. So my wife and I were thrilled because we do like to look at those things. And since we looked at them, I hate to say it, but it's made it even worse because I see what the telescope is doing. And I have taken the lens pieces off and looked in my house and everything looks like a damn sphere.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. to line it up, because it's got like a viewfinder, a sight, and then you got the big tube. So to sight it, we looked across the street, like you aim it at the house and you find a point, and then you make sure that your point in the big tube is the same thing. That's how you line them up. Well, when doing that, we were looking at this fence, and we both look at it and we're just laughing because the fence that's going parallel to the house, it looks as if it's curved because we're looking through the telescope at it. And it's like, how does nobody see these things? And even as great of a telescope as it is, we're looking up at like Jupiter and its moons, and it's like, it looks like little dots going around, or not even going around. It looks like little dots by little
Next
dots.
to a big dot, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, to me, I just, you shouldn't have sent that to me, because now I'm going to make videos and show people exactly what it's doing.
Oh, and you need to, because, you know, when I asked somebody that question about, I said, well, what you're looking at is going to look spherical because your lenses are concave.
Right.
And the answer was, well, they have to be in order to refract the light to enable you to be able to see the celestial bodies. And so you're talking in a circle. If they have to do that to refract the light, then what you're seeing is not accurate. End of story.
You remember that? Didn't I send you a quote by Bacon?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't find that quote. You got to send it back to me.
I'll look for it.
I had it, and I don't remember where I got it. But the quote was basically that we could take everything that we see in the sky, and now that we know how to direct light to the eye of the observer, we can make it as if those items are whatever we want them to be. And I mean, he was basically just saying that we can take the light in the sky, and by focusing it, and that's what those curved mirrors are, and they're right, that in order to give you the image that they want to show you, the mirrors have to be curved like they are. And it certainly changes the way things look. I mean, there's no way you could have ever assumed or thought that the things in the sky that we call stars are suns, unless somebody told you that and then created a device that kind of makes it look like maybe some things in the sky are also spherical. Otherwise, it's nonsense. There's no way you could think that. And that telescope has shown us nothing more than that. It's we've looked at stars, we've looked at planets. I don't see anything that would ever lead me to, in a million years, think that the stars are other suns. I mean, that is baffling to me. That anybody.
Well, don't you think that the telescope was kind of a reverse engineered process once they hypothesized the heliocentric model and the spheres in the solar system? Didn't they probably, at least I think they did, create the telescope the way they did to reinforce that?
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. I mean, of course, we can't always believe the history we're given. I have a whole belief on that as well. But
I agree.
Yeah, Galileo, I mean, they say he discovered the things he discovered because he was the first to use a telescope, which he by far wasn't. There's even paintings and drawings way before Galileo of people with telescopes. So the fact that they give him that award is ridiculous. And even I've looked into his books, and he's got he mapped out different star systems and has them almost perfect. And we know the strength of his telescope, and it was absolutely impossible for him to ever see the stars that he mapped. So, it's just something that they designed in 1900 and attributed to him. And we know that that's not true. So yeah, I definitely think it was reverse engineered. Their whole belief is done.
Well, that's how they got the equation of gravity, because they had to find some way to ostensibly prove the spherical heliocentric model. So,
and then when it didn't work with their observations of the galaxy, they knew they were in trouble, and that's when they brought in Einstein, because they needed somebody to keep gravity around, but also explain why things outside of the Earth are not doing what gravity should. So he basically came up and said, oh, well, space is curved, and everything that we are attributing to gravity is because things are reacting to the curvature around them. It's all nonsense. It just does not.
Sure. It's relativism. I mean, and that's what he called it, the theory of relativity. And if everything is relative, then nothing is absolute. And that's the reason they did that. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's because it's left in the air. You have to be, it's a thought process. It's, in fact, everything that they believe in is a thought process. They love to talk about Newton and his thought process with the cannon. And it's just ridiculous, because it doesn't mean in any way that it's possible. He just simply said, if you shoot a cannon from the top of the Earth and it's too hard, it's going to go into space. And if it's too soft, it'll hit the Earth. But if it's just perfect, it will circle the Earth and come back around the other side. It's like, yeah, prove it. And people say, oh, well, the space station proves it. Like, okay, you're just accepting anything that they throw at you as evidence. And
it's ridiculous.
That's sad in my book.
Oh, it is in mine too. So you probably need to get moving here because you've got a show tonight,
Yes.
your own show in a couple of hours. So is there anything you wanted to mention to wrap this up? And then I'm going to let people know where they can find you. And I'll also put that on the YouTube.
Yeah, no, if anybody ever has any questions, probably the best way to go is ask.fm/Jeranism. You can also email me at jeranism@yahoo. I will admit that I don't nearly get to all the emails. It's absolutely, if there's one thing I don't sleep well at night, it's because of that. I get anywhere from 50 to 100, it seems like, a day. I think right now I'm down to like 1,400 unread. And even at that, even at 100 a day, to read them, which is 2 minutes a piece, is 200 minutes. That's 3 hours. I mean, that's just to read them and not respond to one. Right. So there's just no way I can get to it. And so the ask.fm is pretty cool because people have been using that, and I usually get like 5 or 6 a day. And when I get a free chance, I just go through them and answer them real quick. So that's good. Yeah, so youtube.com/Jeranism, and the Globebusters show is on Sundays
at noon Pacific.
Noon Pacific, and
then your show tonight is your Jeranism Raw on Truth Frequency Radio, and that's at 9 p.m. Pacific.
Beautiful.
And if you want to just take the easy route, go to jeranism.com, and that directs you pretty much everywhere you need to go.
It'll shoot you off every direction.
Yep. And
I tell people to question what you believe. Anything that you believe is true, let yourself look into the evidence for it, and you'll find that a lot of things that you believe are true. But there's a lot of things that you may believe that are true that are just somebody's opinion. And I believe in truth more than that. I don't think that truth is just because the majority of people believe it, and that's what it's come to mean. And granted, that could be true in some senses. If 90% of the world thought tomorrow that blue looked green, so that became green, how do you say whether that's truth or not? Because the majority of people may be correct, but it really comes down to what's true to you. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's some of the things that they say are not lining up. So I just challenge everybody to challenge everything. It doesn't hurt.
Well, sure. And instead of sending Jeran 500,000 emails, maybe you could research a little bit on your own topic of concern or your own question, and then you'll be a little bit more educated. Maybe you'll find your own answer. Because once again, you're leaning on Jeran as an authority, and that's the last thing he wants to be either.
No. No, yeah, I don't. It's certainly not wanting to do that. I think that people have asked me, well, where do you see yourself in this whole thing? And it's simply, I've already put it out there, what I think, and I'm okay with the abuse that I take for it. So I feel like I can kind of be a voice, not so much a leader at all, but more just since I'm already doing it, I feel comfortable continuing it. I don't have a problem. I've already told people how I think and why I think the way I do. And at this point, NASA needs to prove to me that what they're saying is true, or else they're not going to hear me shut up. So I just feel like that's my only place, is that at least it's already known that I don't believe what they're saying and that I don't trust them. And rather than me bail out and somebody else have to come in and explain why they don't believe them, it's just, I think it's good to keep putting pressure on them, and hopefully they wake up and realize that they're either going to have to put up or shut up. And I don't think they can put up.
No, they can't. They've made that pretty clear when they send out clowns like DeGrasse to be their spokespeople. Really? All right. Well, I am going to let you go, and I'm super grateful that you were able to squeeze me in tonight. And I really did want to kind of revisit things with you since it's been quite some time since we spoke. So
anytime you ever want me back, just ask.
All right. Will do. And good luck on your show tonight, and talk to y'all later.
Thanks. Peace.